looking at the locals that live there, right? Because they're not very wealthy people from us for a financial point of view, but like I was looking at them going, they're so happy. You know, they got this beautiful ocean, like they fish, they get food from it, like they got community. It's like, that's pretty goddamn rich, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not about the bank account. They like that's wealth right there in the sun, in the water, in the, you know, so that really struck home when I just thought about it in that way.
Welcome to the Real Estate Mindset Podcast, hosted by Eric Nelson and brought to you by Wild Oak Capital. Eric is a real estate investor, business owner, and performance coach. Throughout this series, Eric explores the mindset behind why certain investors are so successful and how we can learn from their achievements and failures. Eric asks the tough questions around the habits, discipline, mindset, and more required to achieve the most ambitious goals. Thank you for being here and enjoy the show.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Real Estate Mindset Podcast. This is your host, Eric Nelson. Today I have Steve. Steve, I don't want to butcher your last name, so I'll let you say it.
It's Keighery.
Keighery, okay, that's what I thought. But anyway, thanks for being here. I appreciate your time very much.
No problem. I really appreciate you having me on.
So Steve, this is the same thing I do with every guest, of course, is you know, where you've been, what's your story, what have you been up to, and then how did you land in real estate?
So where I started like my financial business property journey was back in 2000. My friend convinced me to go to Robert Kiyosaki seminar. And I wasn't really into that stuff at the time. I was studying at college, and it just like, boom, just opened my mind up, like seriously. And I sort of
it's like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, but in your face, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, it really was just Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and Cash Flow Quadrant. It just was the context of, you know, Robert Kiyosaki doesn't really say specifically what to do. That's really his thing. It does frustrate some people, but I get it because he doesn't want to tell you. It's not following a formula. It's a mindset. And I adopted that. I like listened to all these audio tapes, and yes, they were cassette tapes back in 2000. Nice. I read all of his books. I think most people read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I think most people credit that as one of their books. Like I've read every single book of his, and they still come out. I still read them. So I've sort of brainwashed myself with Robert Kiyosaki. And what he said that struck me as a college student was, you know, you want to be on the B side of the quadrant. You don't want to be an employee. You want to start a business, and then you want to use your business to invest in real estate. So that was the light bulb for me. So the real estate came a bit later. The business came first. So when I finished university, I didn't get a job. I started my own business, you know, ended up merging with other people and creating companies. And, you know, I was lucky to have a fair bit of success in it. You know, we grew a company, I had 300 staff. I left it like 3 years ago, but I still had some shares, and it listed on the Australian Stock Exchange about a year ago now. So that was cool. But I took some time off after that. Because Robert Kiyosaki book, Retire Young, Retire Rich, he talks about when he first exited his business, that his business partner convinced him to take 1 year off. Like, don't do anything. Don't think about what you're going to do next. Just take a year off. And that's what I did. And I came to New Orleans because we love America, and New Orleans is our favorite city. So we came here for 6 months, and that was 4 years ago, and I'm still here.
Nice. So you're still living in New Orleans?
Yeah, funnily enough, I'm sitting actually in the property, which was the Airbnb. We came here for 6 months, and we hired an Airbnb for 6 months. I ended up started investing in property, and I got a lease on it when I was trying to get my visa sorted. And then I started like learning property, and I was doing deals. And then the owner called me and was like, "Hey, I'm like, we're thinking of selling if you're leaving afterwards." And I'm like, "Okay." He was an out-of-state landlord, and I was living in his house. If I couldn't do a deal from that, I didn't deserve to be in real estate. So I actually got a lease option on the house, got really nice terms, 75% of the rent I was already paying counted for equity. And I'm actually closing that lease has been 2 years, the second part of it. And I'm closing on December 1st on the property. And what's really nice is it's a commercially zoned threeplex right near the Garden District in New Orleans. So The note payment that I'm going to have on it is actually less than the rent I'm paying, but I'm also then getting the income from the 2 units at the back, which I'm not getting now as I own it. So I'm paying less on the note, and I've got 2 incomes that pretty much cover the note. So it's a really nice deal.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's like, just a house hack situation sounds really perfect. And to have the triplex, it's funny. I live in a triplex myself. It's a similar story. Like we have the 2 rental incomes, and it just, frees up a little bit more cash and makes you a little bit, able to invest some more stuff. So that's really kind of the goal, but that's awesome. So I guess let's just continue further. So, sounds like you started getting into it. So where are you now? I mean, what's your journey right now?
Yes, I mean, I might go the property route because so I did start buying properties first in Australia. So I own 6 single family rentals there, and I bought them, nothing, again, following the Robert Kiyosaki formula, but nothing too fancy in how I bought them. They were, I'll use American language, they were MLS properties, they were listed. Yeah. So there was nothing fancy with how I bought them. I used traditional financing. I'd started to pay myself well we built the company, and we started to actually get paid a good wage, so I could use that to get loans. And so I started to do that. I bought them not where I live though, because I lived in a very Sydney's super expensive, and the rent relative to the value is really low. So I always rented where I lived, and I bought in areas that had a better return. So I still have those 6 single families. They're in 3 different states in Australia. Nothing was fancy about how I did that. But when I came to New Orleans, we decided we wanted to live here. I wanted to transition to more property. So, that's when I started to learn about the property market here. I had to start a business. My visa is a business investment visa. So I had to invest money into the country, show a business plan. I'm going to hire people. And I made that business it was Home by Louisiana. So really it's about acquiring properties. So, I started wholesaling mainly at first. So wholesaling being, I'm marketing for deals, I'm finding deals, I'm contracting them, but my partners are closing on those deals. So, they're actually the ones doing the rehab and owning the property. And I'm basically just getting a margin, a fee for that. So I started doing that and investing in the marketing, and I started to learn the market really well over here. And once I got confident, when I learned from all these buyers who were, really good and smart, seasoned investors, I started buying a lot more myself. So now I probably keep 80% of the deals and wholesale 20% of them. And that allows me to invest in marketing, and then I will buy them. And my play is really long-term rental using the BRRRR strategy.
Yeah, there's a lot in there that's super smart. So a couple of things you mentioned one was you buy elsewhere and you rent where you live. And this is a super interesting strategy, because I think a lot of people, when they get started, they think they have to buy in their backyard. They think, and lots of people say this, I want to be able to drive by it. And it seems like the more I've learned, actually, depending on where you live, of course, where I live is a super expensive market. So to buy a rental and make money is really challenging. You have to either find a really good deal, it's a owner operate, owner manage, whatever you can do to skim everything to finally make a little money. And I was doing that because that was my theory as well. And I wish I would have known what you were saying is the price per rent is so important, and it is totally possible to buy where you don't live. So the other things that a couple of things I was partnering with some people who are seasoned and learn from them. So wholesaling, basically what you're getting good at is acquisitions. I mean, finding deals, you're probably getting very, very good at that by wholesaling, and you're learning from those guys you're selling to. You can kind of watch them and say, hey, what were you doing here? And create the relationship. So it sounds like it's a really smart strategy. So at this point, you're mostly after single families still, is that right?
I do prefer single families, but I have a few doubles. I do have a 6plex. So I'm open to multifamily, but really my criteria is anything where it's going to cash flow. I want to get at least 1 to 2% of the rent for the value. And I want to be able to pull all my money out in 6 months. That's my goal for a BRRRR. So I need to buy it at a discount. I'm aiming to get 70% of the after repair value. So if I can buy a property like that cash flows, fix it, put a tenant in, 6 months later, once I get a new appraisal, I can get 30-year fixed commercial debt at 75% LTV. So my goal is if I can make that, if I pull out all my money and I've still got a cash flowing property, look, it's the once all the money comes out, my cash on cash return is infinite. But obviously the total return is not significant. You don't get rich off one of those, but you have, I have no money in the deal. It's something you can repeat. And that's really the power of the BRRRR. It is about that repeating process. So, I'm just recycling that money next deal, and just like stacking the portfolio. And I'm aggressively doing that now.
Yeah. 6 months just sounds super tight. I mean, so let's get into this. First, let's back up a little. I think probably most of our listeners know, but BRRRR strategy was coined by Brandon Turner, I think. Buy, rehab, rent, or buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. So basically you buy a property that's distressed, you fix it up, you get a renter in there, then you can show that you have rental income to cover the debt service. So you refinance, and then basically you take all your money out of the deal in a perfect burst scenario, and you repeat. So, I mean, it's an awesome strategy. So what I find is most people think 6 months, but they can't do it. It takes people who are really skilled to do it. So can you kind of describe, are you having success with that 1 6 month time period? And then 2, are you usually seeing the majority of all your cash come back out?
So on the 6 months, like, yes, I'm able to do it reasonably easily. And that's probably not because of my skill as a rehabber or an investor, but that's my skill at finding deals and picking the best deals. So I mean, the Brandon Turner coined the BRRRR with the B, capital B, capital R, capital R, capital R. I actually sort of say I do the BRRRR, capital B, little r, capital R, capital R, capital R, because my rehabs are small, right? And it's hard to do that. It's hard to find those deals if you're not the originator of the deals. If you're not finding the motivated sellers, and if you're not the one solving the problem, it's hard to find those deals. But I am in the position that I find them. So, a lot of my deals don't need a lot of work. I love solving problems where it's like the tenant's the problem. Like, so the house is okay. It's, not in the best condition, but it's like, it's just got a bad tenant. It's hard to show, the person wants to sell really fast. And I'm able to go, I buy it the next week, all cash, as is. I'll take your tenant, done. And that's not that hard for me because it's not a big rehab. And I do have a good team I build around me. I've got a really good property manager who manages my properties. They'll even help me find the contractors. They were also investors. They again, starting wholesaling. I started selling properties to those guys. And so they were buyers of my properties, but they also had a property management company, and we started working together. I'm like, well, hey, manage my properties. So now they don't get as many deals from me, although I still give them a few, but they get a lot of property management business from me. So I am able to do it that fast. I always get to refinance in 6 months. I probably do have the luxury of being the deal finder. And then your second part of the question, what was the second part of the question again?
If you're seeing all your money come out. So if the refinance, yes, if you struggle there, and we can come back to a little bit more about financing, but are you usually seeing most of the money come back out?
So on average, I'm about even, but it does mix, right? So definitely there's some deals where I leave some money on the table, I might have 10, 15K in it, but I have some deals where I pull 20K out in equity when I really hit a home run, like I'm pulling that out as profit. So it is mixed. And for me, sort of over the average. So if I leave a little bit of money in it, it's not the end of the world, but when I pull out, like, it's hard it's not even really profit, and obviously the listeners, I'm sure they know that, like, it's not profit because it's not a capital gains, it's actually equity. So even it might be 20K net that you pull out, but you don't pay capital gains tax. It's not a profit. I need to pay that back. So, netting over them, yeah, I about break even.
Yeah, I think that's the really important thing is like this burst strategy is pitched as like it, you got your money back or maybe more. And sometimes it's not the case. So if you go into it eyes wide open and say, okay, this is possible, I'll get 80-90% of my money back, because if you're putting stuff on credit cards or something, that's just not a good situation. So that's kind of why I asked that question. Then back to financing. So whenever I've done cash out refis, I have noticed that the terms are slightly worse than they would be if I was just buying the property, which is kind of unfortunate, but that's at least what I'm seeing. Are you experiencing the same thing? And then also secondly, well, let me let you finish that one first and I'll come back to my second question.
Yeah, I mean, because I do buy cash, I don't know the acquisition loans. I do think they can be a little bit better. And the loans I get, they're not as good as some investment loans. So I mean, I get like 4.75% interest, 30-year fixed rate. I'm super happy with that. I pay like 3 points, which brings that rate down. I could not pay the points and get a higher rate. So by the market rates of what you can get as just a homeowner, that's expensive, but for me, that's commercial debt. It's in my LLC. They'll do as many as I bring them, at least while that's going. So I'm really happy with that. And I should probably just overlay the fact that I'm really investing more from a macroeconomic standpoint. So I believe that we're going to see inflation. So I'm a real economic student. I love that, and so I overlay that to my thinking, and I believe that we're going to see inflation. We're seeing it right now, but let's just say in the medium term, we're printing a lot of money. There's the dollar's increasing. We're actually producing less. Supply is not coming in, so we're printing all this money. There's less goods being created. That creates inflation. So when you add that 30-year fixed debt, that I'm betting that the value of the dollar is going to go down. And for me, I'm happy with that because inflation isn't good, but it is if you're hedged, right? So if inflation goes up, the rents will go up, the value will go up, and it's not even it's not appreciation. It's not even that like the demographics, it's just the dollar's going down. But my debt is 30-year fixed, and that's not going to move. So, because if your house doubles in value over some point, that's great. But if the cost of dinner is double, if the cost of petrol is double, if the cost of everything else is double, you've preserved your wealth, but you haven't actually added to it. But when you have that debt component, and if you think about it, I have no money. It's the property's all debt, so I have no money in it. That's really my bet.
This is interesting because I've had this exact argument with several people, and I believe exactly what you just said. I may differ with you on inflation, but I do believe if it were to come, for anyone that has a lot of, well-managed debt, it's a really good thing. I mean, you're basically betting on that inflation will. I mean, you described it better than I would, but I completely agree. I don't know where inflation is going to go. I don't pretend to be an economic studier, but I think I know enough that it's absolutely true. If there is some inflation, it's going to be a winner for those of us who are leveraged. So I love that thinking. That's awesome. And what's the other thing is I was going to say was, I've said this before on my show, and I've heard other people say this, is truthfully, this is my opinion, it doesn't matter what the interest rate is. Your interest rate could be 19%, but if you're cash flowing, it works for your model and you making money, it doesn't matter. So basically it's all a math game. It's like, yes, it sounds more expensive than if you're going to go out and buy a home. You might get 3.5, 3.25 if you're really lucky. But it doesn't matter because that's the loan you're getting. That's the loan in your LLC. That's what works for you and you're making money. It's perfect. So it's funny. I think people get tied up in those details. It's like, as long as it works, as long as the math works, as long as you're comfortable and happy with it, it doesn't matter what the interest rate is. So I love your attitude about it.
I agree with that. Let me add one point to the Americans listening, because I'm assuming most of your audience are Americans. So I think Americans just take for granted the fact that you have 30-year fixed interest, because if the money works, it works. And when it's fixed, it's going to keep working if your numbers, your revenue numbers stay the same. And I'm from Australia. The longest you can get fixed is 5 years. So there's no such thing as a 30-year fixed interest. I think America is the only country in the world that has 30-year fixed interest. So, my Australian hair is just like, oh my God, you give me money for 30-year fixed and inflation's coming. Like, I think it's Christmas every day of the week here,
Yeah, maybe you need to go out and get some Australian investors, right?
You know what? Some people have told me you should start a fund. I probably could. I'm pretty happy. I'm happy where I'm at. I don't want that pressure.
No, I was making a joke. I mean, that's what I love about this business is there's so many places that you can make it work for you, right? So I basically am focused on multifamily. We do syndications. And so it's a little bit different game, but it's actually, I mean, I've done some single family stuff, some small multis. I love what you're doing. And I love what you just said too, is I don't want the pressure. I like what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing. Obviously you're successful. So that's awesome. And yeah, another thing that we can touch on about the US is people complain about the cap rates here. And there's a lot of countries in the world where the cap rates, 1, 2, I mean, it's incredible. And the deals, again, it's all math, right? So if it's selling at a 4 cap, doesn't really matter. Does it work for you? Does it work for your investors? Are they making money? It does matter. Of course, you don't want to overpay, but it's like, it's really is, are you paying market rate? Are you paying market cap rate? It doesn't really matter what it is, as long as you can make the deal work for your investors. So I think it's kind of similar with interest.
Well, I mean, I think I've invested in the syndication before as just passively, but what I like about it is because it is the same model essentially, right? In that you generally are then doing a refi and paying out the investors. And like, it's the same model. I love the single families though, because what I really like to do is I like to take inefficient things and sort of do them to some level of efficiency. If you know what I mean? Because like multifamily is awesome and there's like all these systems, but personally, I don't really want to. I don't want to play that game. I could, but it would take a lot of work. Like I'm a fair way away from playing at a high level, you know. Whereas in my market, you know, with single family, like I can get there really fast, and I have got there really fast, and you know, I think I have a real advantage here. So because most people are going to leave, the most big players are going to leave that, and I'll take it.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. So again, I just absolutely love your attitude, because it's basically find your lane, find what works for you, and do it really well. And then, you know, there's always this shiny object syndrome. It's like, oh, that guy's in self-storage, you know, and I had a couple of self-storage people on the show, and I even admitted, it was like, this sounds pretty good, you know, just, but I think it's like, find what you're passionate about, find what you like. Sounds like you're super successful. So, you know, I guess the next question would be, and probably what I would think most listeners would want to hear, is how do you find the deals? Because especially in this market, that's the big challenge. And I know that you obviously have experience, but you know, how did you get there? I mean, what was it that got you, would you say, a couple tricks to find deals?
So, I mean, really my approach is a real branded approach. And I think most people don't do that. So I think what worked traditionally for finding deals was to look like the real local guy, handwritten yellow notes. And I mean, that's the cliche, right? And I think that really worked when they were like handwritten yellow notes. Now that's all systematized and people are buying them. And bandit signs, they work too. Firstly, let me say everything works if you do. So I think again, I think we're starting a theme here. Find your lane. So I know people that make those things work and do them. But I guess for me, I prefer a more branded approach. You know, my brand is consumer oriented. I think most people follow different gurus who teach them how to invest, and those gurus, all their branding is generally about people finding investors. So it's like posting checks. It's profits, it's, you know, and that's cool if you want to attract investors. That's not me. I'm attracting homeowners. I'm attracting people who are tired landlords that want to sell. I'm attracting people that inherited a home and don't know what to do with it. That's my market. So that's who I market to. So, you know, I don't be too fancy. You don't want too strong a brand. Like there's a mix, but but it's professionalism. You know, I have logos. I wear a polo t-shirt, but just jeans, nothing too fancier than that. If you go to my website, you're going to see videos and videos and videos of me in houses I'm buying. You know, you're going to see videos of people who sold their house to me, and I'm at the closing table. You know, so that way I can generate less leads but do more deals because my conversions are strong. People trust me. So that's really what I do, and everything I do, I'll push into my website. So, you know, if I'm sending out direct mail, I'm linking to my website. You know, I'll do online marketing too. I want to get them to my website. I want them to see who I am, get to know us, and then when they call, you know, and they start speaking to us, like there's already a level of trust, and they're going to pick me over the other person. That's how I set it up.
Yeah, it's awesome. If you have a good track record, and I love the idea of the video with people who sold to you, that's super smart. You know, if they're saying, hey, you know, we got the deal done and got me out of this situation. And it's funny because I think you're right. I mean, they're called bandit signs, but it has this sometimes negative connotations, like they're going to undercut you. Well, maybe that's the case sometimes, but in reality, most cases seems like you're actually helping someone out of a situation they don't want anymore. Like you said, maybe a bad tenant, or, you know, maybe someone passed, they don't want that memory. They just want it gone. And so a lot of times you're really helping someone out. So I don't think it's necessarily like that way at all. So I think you can actually be a very scrupulous person, do the right thing, and make some money on this deal.
And I think it links to conversion. I think you need to help people, right? And the more people you help, the more deals you do. And by saying that, like we turn people away all day. Like if you're speaking to my acquisition specialist all day, she's saying to you, why don't you listen with a realtor? You know, saying, hey, why don't you just rent it out? It's going to make money, right? Like, hey, do you have family that want the house? We're pushing away all day because we're just trying to help them. We don't need to buy every single house, and every lead we generate is not a lead, right? Like they need to be our sellers, you know, and so we'll always tell them, list with a realtor, fix it up yourself, list it, you'll get more. We're honest about that. But if they don't want to do that, they tell us, hey, I don't want to do that. I want to go on next week. I don't want to do that stuff. I was like, okay, well, if that's the case, we can buy it, and this is where we'll be at. So choice is yours. There's no hard pressure. There's no sales from a perspective of trying to convince someone. It's just presenting options, being honest, being authentic, laying out the cards. And when you do that, yeah, some of them are going to go list with a realtor and go another route, and that's fine. But the ones who decide to go with you, it's going to be a good deal. They're going to be happy. You're going to be happy, and everything's going to work.
Awesome. Yeah, I really, really love it. So the second part of the show, we kind of shift into some mindset stuff. So I'll just ask you a series of questions, and we can, wrap beyond that if it gets to that. But don't feel the pressure to answer a certain way, right? So the first question is, do you have a morning routine?
Yeah, I do. I really had a lot of impact from Hal Elrod, Miracle Morning. So it's funny because I really was into that routine, and it helped me significantly when I started my business here. I would wake up and do 10 minutes of meditation. I would do some push-ups. I would do affirmations. Then I'll do reading. I didn't really do the visualizations part of that, mental part of that. That didn't really sit with me. I did actually do journaling, and that really helped me grow my business. And I did fall out of it for a little bit. Just like we got a dog, and it just ruined the technique. But then I actually saw Hal speak again recently at the Bigger Pockets conference in New Orleans, and it just like woke me up again to it. So I brought it back on. And I have affirmations there, and it really gives me a place to change, because I'll add a few things when I want to change something, like I can add it into that, and I'll look at that every single day. So it's like a hack to, like, if you want to change, like, it's there because you remember, and it's added. So I'm really big into morning routines, and I've seen significant results from them.
Yeah, I mean, so my business partner was at BBCon as well, and it sounded like it was awesome. I wish I could have gone, but Hal Elrod is an amazing person, but his book is incredible. So, I mean, I think it gets said a lot because of that question. People bring it up. Just a super, super awesome guy. And I do think so. I mean, I always say whatever works for you, but I think to have some time in the morning and actually think about, where you're headed, even for the day and for maybe years down the road, super powerful. So completely agree with what you said. Speaking of that, next one is, what books are you reading, or what books can you recommend?
I just read Prosper, which is interesting. That's by Adam McTaggart and Chris Masterson. So it's a little bit different, right? It's about being resilient. So, it talks about different types of capital. There's financial capital, but there's also social capital. There's material capital. It's about being able to take hits when things go wrong, And what really hit me, because I met them at the New Orleans Investment Conference a couple of years back, and I bought the book, and I never read it. And I started reading it actually when Hurricane Ida hit New Orleans, and we stayed, and we had no power. And reading the book, and the book is about that. It's about being able to have no power, being able to have sustenance. So really, really, really hit me the right time. So I think that's very important, because I've read all, like I said, Robert Kiyosaki's. I've read all that stuff. That's all my favorite. I've done a lot of mindset books, but I've had a lot of success now, and I'm trying to find balance. I'm a real growth oriented person. My last company, it was growth, and it was crazy, and I loved every moment of it. But sort of now moving on, I'm like, I don't want to do that again. I don't need to do that again. So I'm starting to think more about, I'm not that, I don't have that many skills to other than financial, what if we get hit and I need electricity, I need solar, can I use tools? So I'm sort of getting a little bit more into that, that thinking, and that book Prosper is really good. So I think everyone should get there at some point. But business wise, I mean, Robert Kiyosaki for sure, everyone says it, read all of his books though. If you like Rich Dad Poor Dad, Cash Flow Quadrant, keep going. I don't think there's so much more. Once you start scratching that surface, I cannot tell you how much Robert Kiyosaki shaped my thinking, and I cannot tell you the success I've had because of that. And Rich Dad Poor Dad, Cash Flow Quadrant, as revolutionary as they are, it's just the tip of the iceberg.
Oh, that's such a good tip, because I think most people, I would say most guests on the show have read Rich Dad Poor Dad. Some of them, probably more than half, Cash Flow Quadrant, myself included. And I don't think I've ever read anything else. I listen to podcasts, he's on his stuff, but this is a great tip. I'm gonna dive in further, because he's obviously a very, very smart guy, and I love the mindset stuff. So I imagine, I'll reach out to you and say, thanks for the tip, in a couple of months.
you will, I guarantee you will. It's all Robert.
Oh, that's awesome. Right on. So The next one is, have you had a coach or a mentor? And if so, was it worth the investment?
Yeah, I mean, so not in, yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of mentors. I mean, Robert Kiyosaki was a mentor, even though I didn't pay like from all those things. But, I had some really good business partners in my business in Australia, and we had complementary skill sets. And so we really pushed each other, shaped each other. I would pull in consultants for things. So, I did have coaches for marketing and for building my team, and we had HR people. So I'm always pulling people in. So I think that's important. I did pay for trainings as well. Like I've done Vina Cox-Jones, like all her trainings on wholesaling, real estate. So I went to Bigger Pockets conference. I go down to Pete Fortunato in Florida. I started going there. I'm heading to the National RIA convention, which is in Cincinnati next week. Although it might have already been passed by the time this is on. So I do, but I don't think I had a real coach where like coach me every, like one person. I'll cycle through different skills and different things.
Yeah, no, I guess, part of the question is, I think people hesitate because it costs money, right? So like I think it's a perfect example is to say, I brought in someone to talk about marketing. I brought in someone to talk about HR and basically bring a skill set that you can be kind of coached on. And a lot of people kind of scoff at that stuff because it costs money. But that's kind of my question is, was it worth the value? I mean, was it worth the investment?
100%. I mean, some of them weren't. You need to move on from them, right? So,
Sure.
but yes, like in aggregate, absolutely. And sometimes, making a misinvestment is just part of the process. Sometimes like it teaches you, as long as you're not going broke on it, like make that investment. If you think it's important, if it's a skill you want to speed up, make the investment. Just don't buy the $50,000 coaching programs from, like steer clear of those from those guru mentors, but like paying for coaches that have a skill, do it, try it, lean into it. If it's not working, cancel that coach, find a new one.
Awesome advice. I love that answer. Okay, cool. The next one's a little harder. So what's something that you have done that you would not repeat that we can learn from?
Done that I would not repeat. Wow, that is really good question. Philosophically, I have trouble answering that because like, I think even the things I wouldn't repeat, I learned from them. So so I'm always learning.
Maybe we can learn from them without going through the pain, right? So that's the point of the question. I mean, I changed it from a mistake because originally like the question was, what's a mistake? And I love your thinking is like, yeah, you learn from it. So that's why I say something you wouldn't necessarily repeat that maybe we can steal the lesson from.
Yeah. So probably not knowing your market. So my property that I bought in Australia, I geeked out on the market. I pulled spreadsheets. I figured out like I bought the best properties in the best areas at that time, based on my opinion. But my first property I bought here in the US, actually, I moved fast on it. I sort of had to for my business investment visa, and I bought in Lafayette, actually, not from New Orleans where I was. And I bought it and I didn't know the market. I looked through New Orleans eyes. I saw like it was like a New Orleans style house, double story, all needed work, but like I saw them, I was like, oh, cool. And what I realized later on when I tried to sell it, that it wasn't cool because everything was single family in that area. And in that area, that was a real negative. So I didn't understand that market enough. I didn't speak to property managers or people, and I made that decision too quick. And that was a mistake. So I think you just need to know your market, speak to people local, get that advice. And I wouldn't do that again. But that being said, like that was my first property here, and I bought a lot since then, and I learned a lot from that. So I, for me, it was part of the journey. So I don't regret it because it was my journey. Sometimes I think done is better than perfect. Sometimes you just need to take action. You need to be able to afford it, right? So I mean, I have some capital, so I can take some risks when to me it's small and I can handle it, And so I think you need to find your level of risk you can handle, and sometimes just do it because it will move you forward. Even if that's wrong, the next thing you do, you're going to benefit, and that skill's going to keep growing.
Oh man, I'm glad you took the time to think on that, because that tip was so valuable, and there's a lot in there. So first of all is, a lot of people will make a first mistake or make a mistake on their first investment and then quit. They'll say that sucked. I lost money or whatever, I'm out, and just walk away. I love the attitude of like, you know what, find a position where if you are to lose a little money, one, it won't bankrupt you. And two, you say, okay, I know that I may not get it right on the very first go, but then you also gave us a monster tip is know the market. And even if you don't, know that you don't and find someone who does. So like we invest all over Texas and Oklahoma, basically. It's not really possible to know the markets that well. Once we get a deal under contract, we'll super nerd out. And if we have to walk away, we will. But leading up to that, you have to trust the property manager, trust some locals, like you said. You know, there's ways to learn quickly. There's people who can help you get there that you don't make that mistake. So it was an awesome tip. So thanks for sharing.
Awesome.
Next one is this is hilarious. I just said tip, but what mindset tip can you share with our listeners that they can take away?
So I think mindset and something that served me well is like, I always just move forward, right? I don't dwell on the past. I don't dwell on mistakes. I always am just thinking when something goes wrong, like I don't stress about it going wrong. I sit and I say, okay, from here, what's our next best move? And that has served me really well because I think people freak. Something goes wrong, like, why did that go wrong? And they go through, they go backwards and they spend a lot of energy going backwards, complaining, feeling stress that I'm just like, I don't even care what happened. I don't even care whose fault it is. I will diagnose later to improve, but like, I don't even care. I don't care what's going on. Where are we at? What's the situation? Cool. What do we think the next moves are what's our next best move?
Oh, it's so good. And I actually forgot to mention one other thing that you mentioned that kind of dives into that too a little bit is you said done is better than perfect. And I love that mentality because I really do think, you know, there's terms for it like analysis paralysis, or you just kind of like get stuck in a situation where you think you have to do something perfect. Action is better. Action moving forward is better than doing something perfect. And I think that that's such a valuable tip. I mean, obviously you want to do the best you can, right? But if you make a mistake or, you know, if it's something to learn from, it's better to take action because you will take more action, you know? So those two were awesome. So these next questions to me are the hardest. So settle in.
All right.
What is your definition of success?
So, I mean, I'm still assessing that, right? And I'm sort of going on that journey because, you know, I did see growth, business, you know, I wanted to IPO a company and like I did that now, you know, so, I always measure when you talk about financial success, you know, like Robert Kiyosaki, wealth is measured in time, you know, so I'm not into designer stuff. I don't care about fancy things, fancy house maybe for myself, but nothing else really, because wealth is measured in time. How long can you survive without working? That's it. Doesn't matter how much money you can make, a whole bunch of money and have a whole bunch of expenses. That's not wealth. And you can have not much of money and not much expenses and you're wealthy too. So I think financially I measure that by time, you know, freedom. And I think just more generally success, I am, you know, more conscious of my family, being happy, spending time with them, you know, being safe, you know, if things go wrong, you know, like I'm at that level of thinking and I am trying to assess it because, you know, I am a growth guy, you know, we grew my last company really fast. And when I was here, I was trying to like, at first I'm like, I want to be aggressive, but then I'm like, I don't think I do, you know, like we're humming along. I don't think I want a big operation. So I think success is just, you know, being happy, having control, not having to, you know, look for handouts or have a job or anything like that. Like that freedom and happiness is really what success is.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. So I asked that question basically because I think it's true for everybody, right? There's no one definition. That's why I love the question it basically has to work for you. But I completely agree. I mean, success is basically, in my opinion, measured in time. And again, you don't have to be wealthy. You don't have to be rich to have a bunch of time. You just have to reduce expenses if that's where you are. And then you can gain that freedom. So I mean, I really respect what you said because I think it's totally true. So
can I say on that too? Something struck me a lot when we went to Turks and Caicos recently, and that place is beautiful, man. But what I really learned looking at the locals that live there, right? Because they're not very wealthy people from us as for a financial point of view, but like I was looking at them going, they're so happy. You know, they got this beautiful ocean, like they fish, they get food from it, like they got community. It's like, that's pretty goddamn rich, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not about the bank account. They like that's wealth right there in the sun, in the water, in the, you know, so that really struck home when I just thought about it in that way.
Oh, it's absolutely true. And that's why I think we kind of agree completely, because it's not about the amount of money, right? It's about, you know, happiness around you, your value and where you place that value. So yeah, that's really cool that you could take a step back and recognize that and just like see how the locals are living. And that's probably true of most places. You know, it's like you can seize plenty of people who aren't like rich by our standards, whatever that is, but plenty happy. And I would call that way more successful than someone who has a pile of cash and is miserable.
Absolutely.
Awesome. And so the second part of that question is, if someone asks you, why are you successful, and others maybe not so much, what's your response?
I mean, action, of course, and just attitude, just being willing to put in the work, being humble enough just to keep moving forward, and making a lot of mistakes. Like just make those mistakes, keep moving forward. And I've done that, and I've just always been focused on that. I haven't been too stressed when things have gone wrong. I haven't been super excited when things have been awesome. You know what I mean? Like I just keep taking that journey. And I mean, that's very, you know, I also get that from the meditation, just like it is what it is. And I think that's really just helped me personally keep moving forward every day. That consistent action really starts to compound and do well. I think I'll add like something into there. I think people, they overestimate what they can do in the short term and they underestimate what they can do in the long term. I don't know. That's a quote from someone. I don't know who to attribute it to, but I think that's the success part. It's just people, they think they can do awesome and they do this a little bit of action and they don't get a result and they get frustrated. And it's like, just relax, you know, but that's saying they thought they were going to do better faster, but that person doesn't realize they can do 1,000,000 times better than what they even think they can do if they just consistently keep moving forward every day.
Oh yeah, so good. I've heard something similar. You said it differently than what I've heard. I think what I've heard is they say most people underestimate what they can do in a year, or no, excuse me, overestimate what they can do in a year, and then way underestimate what they can do in 10 years. And it's exactly that, because it's typically, if you're going to stick with it, exponential, right? So you have a little bit of success, you find some, you know, the ways to make it faster. And so, yeah, that's awesome. And it's obvious why you're successful. I mean, your mindset and your ability to think that way is just incredible. And this is why I love this topic, is because it is very, very powerful. It's kind of like this hoorah thing in a lot of like conventions, you know, and I think some people want to blaze over it, but it is the cornerstone of truly getting to where you want to be. Again, success means something different, but where you want to be, the mindset behind it's so powerful. So just love what you said. Well, Steve, this has been an amazing show. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks so much for all your thoughts and honesty. Appreciate you being on.
Awesome. I really appreciate you having me. I hope your listeners can get something from that. And yeah, I hope it was good.
Cool. And the final thing, of course, is where can people reach out? You know, if they want to contact you, if maybe if they want to sell their house, I mean, where can they find you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm only really in like Greater New Orleans, Louisiana, but you can email me at steve@homebuyerlouisiana.com. So steve@homebuyerlouisiana.com. You know, you can click me on LinkedIn if you want, under Stephen Keighery. You know, reach out if you want. I mean, I don't really have anything to offer, so to say, but I mean, I do believe in the go-giver abundance mentality. You know, I like helping people. I just think I'm not transactional, you know, in helping someone. I think that when you help someone, like, you get paid back through the universe. You know, it comes to you in other places. So, you know, I've been helped. I like to help. So, I mean, reach out if you want to.
So, well, thanks again, Steve. Appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Real Estate Mindset Podcast. If you've enjoyed the content today, please follow this show wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to head over to wildoakcapital.com for more information or to connect with Eric directly. Please take a moment to leave a review or tell a friend about what you've listened to today. We hope you'll tune in again soon.